We need to talk about immigration. The truth is that for nearly 30 years, mass migration has been far, far too high under all governments, by all parties, and not just here, too high all across the Western world. And it can't continue. We need a new approach. I'm the new leader of the Conservative Party, and we're going to do things differently. I'm saying no more. The system is broken. We can't go on like this, and we need to change. Let's break it down. 1. If immigration happens too quickly, there is no integration. The ties that bind us start to fray. It doesn't matter whether you are massively for immigration or massively against. Without a shared national identity, our country will suffer. When people come here, they must buy into the values, customs, and institutions that attracted them here in the first place. 2, the political class can't pretend that immigration comes only with benefits and no costs. We can all see the pressure on housing, roads, GPs, and wages. The failure of politics over the last 30 years has been to gloss over it or to make it a fringe issue. That has to stop. 3, we can no longer be naive. It's nonsense that we have allowed a situation where judges deem perfectly safe countries to be unsafe, that loopholes are willfully exploited by those coming here. Our institutions are failing. They've proven they are unable to determine who wants to contribute and who is simply exploiting our openness. Britain is a high-trust society, but we can't let our system be taken advantage of. So we need to do things differently. I want to rebuild the trust between the Conservative Party and the British people. I know we've got a lot of work to do, but the first step is to accept that mistakes were made. And that is what I will do. We got it wrong, and we are going to learn. When done right, limited immigration can work for this country. But it's no surprise that many people don't believe that anymore. The Conservatives are going to develop a detailed plan for immigration to put before you at the next election. Not the policies of Labour, which are going to fail, but a real plan that will, for the first time in 30 years, actually bring immigration right down and be honest with you about the trade-offs. It's time to tell the truth on immigration, and over the coming months, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
5.38 billion, and that doesn't even include the daily cost of what is happening in the English Channel with drones, with Border Force, and with the massive processing centre at Manston. I don't know what the true figure is, but it wouldn't be difficult to work out that it would be several multiples of what has been taken away from Britain's pensioners in terms of their winter fuel allowance and the hit that will be taken by British farmers. But then, why would they matter? They're British. They seem to be always at the back of the queue. So I'm pretty angry about those numbers today. I think the general population will be too. And for Kemi Badenoch to stand up yesterday and read off the autocue as she did, to say we got things slightly wrong. No, you didn't get things slightly wrong. You have fundamentally changed the lives of everybody in this country and diminished living standards for virtually everyone.
Kemi Badenoch's speech on an immigration presents both opportunities and risks for her leadership and the Conservative Party's future. On the positive side, Badenoch directly addresses a long-standing public concern, positioning herself as a leader unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths. By acknowledging that mass migration has been far too high and highlighting its impacts on housing, infrastructure, and social cohesion, she resonates with voters who feel these issues have been ignored or minimized. Her emphasis on the need for integration and a shared national identity may appeal to those who value cultural unity and seek policies that ensure newcomers contribute to British society. Additionally, her critique of legal loopholes and institutional failures could bolster her credibility among those frustrated with perceived abuses of the immigration system. By admitting past mistakes, she demonstrates humility and a willingness to learn, potentially rebuilding trust with disillusioned Conservative supporters. However, this approach carries significant risks. By framing immigration primarily as a problem, Badenoch risks alienating younger, urban, and pro-migrant voters who may view her rhetoric as exclusionary or divisive. Her call for migrants to adopt British values, while resonant with some, could be criticized as oversimplifying the complexities of integration and diversity. Furthermore, her focus on reducing immigration pressures without detailing how these reductions will be achieved leaves her vulnerable to accusations of pandering without a concrete plan. Critics may also argue that issues like housing and infrastructure strains are as much a result of government underinvestment as they are of immigration, shifting blame onto her party's record. Lastly, by polarizing the debate and labeling Labour's policies as destined to fail, she risks deepening political divisions on an already contentious issue. Nigel Farage has issued a blistering critique of Kemi Badenoch's recent speech on immigration, accusing her and the Conservative Party of failing to take accountability for decades of mismanagement and the deep economic and social consequences it has wrought on the British public. Farage began by emphasizing the staggering £5 sterling 38 pence billion annual cost of the UK asylum system, pointing out that this figure doesn't even factor in the additional daily costs associated with managing the English Channel crossings, including the deployment of drones, border force operations, and the maintenance of processing centers like Manston. He contrasted these expenses with the financial sacrifices imposed on British citizens, particularly pensioners who have seen their winter fuel allowances cut, and farmers who are increasingly struggling under policies that undermine their livelihoods. Farage argued that this demonstrates a government that places the needs of British citizens at the back of the queue, catering instead to a failing immigration system that continues to spiral out of control. Farage was particularly scathing in his assessment of Badenoch's rhetoric, accusing her of trying to downplay the crisis with claims that the Conservative Party had only got things slightly wrong. For Farage, this statement is not only disingenuous but deeply insulting to the millions of Britons whose living standards have been fundamentally diminished under successive Conservative governments. He pointed out that the cumulative impact of these policies has left housing, infrastructure, and public services under immense strain, while cultural tensions have increased due to a lack of proper integration policies. In his view, Badenoch's promise to do things differently and rebuild trust is nothing more than empty posturing, especially given her admission that the party has been aware of these failures for years, but has taken little meaningful action to address them. Farage also took aim at the delivery of Badenoch's speech, criticizing her reliance on an autocue and accusing her of lacking sincerity and conviction. He argued that her breakdown of the issue, highlighting the failures of integration, the costs of immigration, and the exploitation of legal loopholes, was little more than a rehash of points that have been discussed for decades without meaningful progress. Farage dismissed her promises of a new plan as hollow, suggesting that the Conservatives lack both the will and the capability to implement real reforms. Instead, he argued, their policies have consistently prioritized external pressures over the well-being of their own citizens, leaving pensioners and farmers to bear the brunt of their economic mismanagement. In Farage's view, Badenoch's speech was an exercise in damage control, designed to placate a frustrated electorate rather than address the root causes of Britain's immigration crisis. He criticized her for failing to present any concrete solutions or acknowledge the full extent of the harm caused by Conservative policies. Farage warned that unless genuine, decisive action is taken to overhaul the immigration system and prioritize the needs of British citizens, the government will continue to face mounting public anger and eroding trust. For Farage, the time for empty rhetoric is over, and he believes Badenoch's speech was yet another example of a political class out of touch with the realities facing ordinary Britons.
I believe our country is a beacon of light that shines all over the world, a place of security, opportunity, and prosperity, where people are treated equally. Millions want to come here, but we as politicians have to do right by the citizens of this country before anyone else. Our country cannot sustain the numbers we have seen. We are reducing the quality of life for people already here because immigration is at a pace too fast to maintain public services, and at a rate where it is next to impossible to integrate those from radically different cultures. It is time to tell the truth. For decades, the entire political class in this country has presided over mass migration. Since 1994, every year has seen more people arrive in this country than leave. Numbers climbed and climbed. During the last Conservative administration, we promised to bring numbers down. We did not deliver that promise. We ended free movement, but the system that replaced it is not working. Some of the increase in migration was for humanitarian reasons that few would disagree with, taking in refugees from Ukraine and British overseas nationals from Hong Kong. But that was not the whole story. We may have tried to control numbers, but overall, we did not deliver.
Kemi Badenoch frames the UK as a beacon of security, opportunity and equality, a country that naturally attracts millions of migrants. However, she stresses that politicians must prioritize the needs of British citizens above all else, arguing that the current pace of immigration is unsustainable. According to her, rapid migration has strained public services, reduced the quality of life for existing residents, and made it nearly impossible to integrate those arriving from vastly different cultural backgrounds. She calls for honesty about the failures of the political class, pointing out that every year since 1994 has seen more people arrive in the UK than leave. Badenoch acknowledges that the Conservative Party has fallen short of its promises to reduce immigration, noting that while free movement was ended, the replacement system has proven ineffective. She highlights humanitarian cases, such as refugees from Ukraine and British nationals from Hong Kong, as justifiable exceptions, but asserts that these alone do not account for the overall increase in migration. The speech is a rare admission of failure from a government figure, but it also shifts the narrative toward the need for systemic reform. Badenoch's argument implicitly critiques both past policies and the broader political establishment, positioning her as someone willing to confront uncomfortable truths. However, critics may view this rhetoric as an oversimplification of complex issues like global migration and the pressures of international crises, while the lack of detailed solutions leaves her proposed reforms open to scrutiny. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more updates, and join us on Telegram for exclusive content and discussions. Your support means a lot.